We're going to put a new cord retractor into this Electrolux Oxygen 3 canister vacuum, model number EL7020B. We'll also put in a new internal permanent HEPA filter. Make sure that your vacuum looks exactly like this one because a lot of these models are very similar. Obviously, we'll start by unplugging the device and then removing the hose and the dust bag, and just set these over to the side. Start by removing the control panel cover. There's two tabs right towards the front of the control panel cover, and you just use your screwdriver to pry those two tabs out and lift. It should lift straight out, and just be careful there because there's two tabs in the front, and then in the back you've got these aren't tabs here in the back, these are two little loops, and then just set that to the side. All right, now we're going to need a Torx screwdriver to pull out the screws and remove the cover. There's two screws in the back underneath the control panel cover, so I'm just going to remove those two screws. Then I'll just turn the vacuum upside down in order to get those screws to fall out. And then you can see the screws here. And just put those to the side. Before you can remove the red cover here, there's two tabs inside of the dust bag area that you just push in using your flathead screwdriver. And once those two tabs are pushed in, we'll be able to remove this red cover. Take care not to damage anything, and just work this red cover out. Note that the front part of the cover has some electrical connections, so that will have to be done very carefully, and we'll note the location of the electrical connections prior to removing that part of the cover. There's the two tabs there that we were talking about earlier. And when you pull this off, you'll see there's an electrical connection here, and we'll note where these electrical connectors go before we remove this part of the lid. Note the red wire on the left, the black wire in the middle, brown wire on the right. Now we're going to take off the handle. So note the location of this tab right here. I'm going to push, there's two of them, one here and one on the other side. I'm going to push it with my thumb and use the screwdriver on the other side to squeeze these two tabs together, and it'll pop out. One of these tabs broke previously, so ignore that. Now I'll just use a screwdriver to pry these handles out and take the handle off. Now I'm just going to pop off the LED cover, and again just set that to the side. Stop here and take a snapshot with your own camera and note the location of the electrical wires and the black tubing. I'll get a close-up of the black tubing here so that you can see where it is on my vacuum. Yours may be slightly different. And also note the location of the wires underneath the tubing, and note the colors, because this is very important when we're putting this back together, where these wires are going to go. Note that these blue and black wires underneath and what they're attached to, and how we're going to put that back together when we get there. Note the location of this black and white wire on this circuit board. We'll have to remove these circuit boards to get at the wiring underneath. Take your time, do it carefully. These are very delicate. And note that this circuit board that's underneath here has a couple of tabs. There's one here and there's one on the other side that are kind of holding it in. I can't emphasize enough how important it is that you take photos of this before you take out these circuit boards. Your vacuum may be slightly different, so make sure that you document where your wires and your tubes are before you pull out these circuit boards. Okay, now that the circuit boards are out of the way, note the location of this wiring harness here and this black tube. This wiring harness will be disconnected because that goes to the power cord retractor, and we'll pull it out from the bottom after we disconnect it above. Note the location of this black tube here because we'll have to make sure that gets put back in the right spot when we're done. Just pull out this black tube here and set it to the side, and then grab the little spring here in the power cord recoil button, and just want to make sure we don't lose this, and set that to the side. Then we're going to disconnect the wiring harness, and again, make sure you understand which wires are going where before you disconnect it. Note the color of these wires coming in and the color of the wires going out. Once we disconnect this, then we will be able to pull it out from the bottom. Again, take photos, document where your wires are and where your tubes are before you remove this wiring harness here. And then you can take these circuit boards and set them to the side. There's 2 Torx screws in the dust bag area here that need to be removed to get the bottom off. There's 2 more in the front handle area here that need to come off. And then there's 2 in the back. These 2 Torx screws in the back are way deep down in here, so you have to have a long-handled Torx screwdriver to get these out. Once you take these 2 out, you should be able to pull the bottom off relatively easily. Now we should be able to pull out the cord retractor. Just pull it out from underneath and have to thread these wires through the top. If we are just replacing the cord retractor, we'd replace it now and start putting the vacuum back together. However, I'm also replacing this internal permanent HEPA filter. You can see the part number here. So we're going to put this HEPA filter into the inside of the motor compartment, and you'll see that I've already removed it earlier, and now I just have to replace it. In order to get it in there, we have to take the motor compartment apart and replace it from the inside, so we'll do that now. There are 3 screws right here that we'll have to remove on the bottom of the motor compartment, so I will do that. And then we're going to have 2 screws on the back here that are a little bit more difficult to get to. One here and then one on the other side over here. I had to remove this gray mesh screen. There's a Torx screw right there that I had to remove and get this mesh screening out of the way in order to get to that last Torx screw here holding in the motor compartment on the left-hand side. Now that we got that screw out, we can pull apart this motor compartment, and you'll see that's the motor there, and I should be able to just pull that off. And you'll see here where that internal permanent filter is supposed to go. Okay, we're going to push it in from the inside of the motor compartment, and it has these 4 little locking tabs. Make sure that those are secure. Make sure that foam rubber on the inside is secure, and then we can start putting this guy back together. The motor compartment has now been put back together in the opposite fashion in which we just took it apart. I'm going to double check these locking mechanism on the filter just to make sure it's nice and secure before moving to the next step, which is to replace that cord retractor. Here is the cord retractor that I'm using. You can see my part number there. Double check yours to make sure that your part number fits your vacuum. This cord retractor will fit into the slot on the bottom of the vacuum right here. The wiring harness will fit through a hole in the top and come out near where the circuit boards are on the top. Make sure that the cord is oriented in the right direction so that it pulls out towards the back of the vacuum and recoils into the vacuum. Once the cord retractor has been inserted properly and the wiring harness pulled through to the top, we can put the bottom back on the vacuum, secure it, and then test our cord retractor before putting the vacuum back together. Now that the cord retractor has been tested and it works, we can put the vacuum back together in the opposite fashion in which we took it apart. You'll have to rely on your memory and the photos we took when we were taking it apart in order to tell you where all the pieces go when you're putting it back together. Best of luck to you. If you have any questions, comments, please feel free to leave them below.